Welcome to the 23rd Annual Sedona International Film Festival. You're watching festival coverage of interviews and events throughout the week. The following is sponsored by...
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the 2017 Sedona International Film Festival. I'm Tanya Jude Moore here at the Sedona Rouge Live, and I have the distinct honor of being here with Peter Marshall.
Well, thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a dream come true.
Well, I haven't done squares since, let me see, I went off in 1823, I think it was.
Before there was dirt.
But it was a big part of my life. On the show tomorrow night, I'll be talking about my career. I'm going to do something tomorrow night I've never done before. I'm going to talk about my career, my life, and sing songs that sort of match my career and my life. I've been in show business. Next year, I'll be in 76 years. I started when I was 15, yeah. And I've worked with a lot of different people, and I've toured with Hope, and I've worked with Sinatra and Durante, and Jolson got me my first job. I talk all about that, yeah, in the show, and hopefully it'll be entertaining. I'm just wondering, will people remember Jolson? Will people remember Hope? It's amazing. Young people, celebrity, if you become well-known, it's not a lasting thing. It doesn't. Ask young people about Jolson or Maurice Chevalier or Ray Bolger or any of those people. They haven't got a clue. So I'm hopefully the people tomorrow night will know who the heck I'm talking about.
I really think that the film industry keeps people alive for so long,
well, yes,
generation after generation, and you've been in this industry such a long time. I mean, what kind of changes have you noticed?
Well, music, comedy. Comedy used to be so clever, and I find it quite brash today. I mean, I worked nightclubs for many years. I had a comedy act with Tommy Noonan and Marshall, and we couldn't even use the word damn. And today it's just ridiculous. I love clever comedy. I don't like really, you don't have to be. I see young people and I go, why are they doing that? That is so awful and tacky. And music today is just god-awful. And I talk about that. I talk about Rodgers and Hammerstein and Rodgers and Hart, and I talk about, Irving Berlin and all this wonderful music, the Gershwins, and that's the kind of stuff I sing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not. It's changed a huge change for me, comedy and music.
And do you? I mean, speaking of that, I mean, do you feel that class could be brought back to entertainment? I mean, do you feel like it could be elevated again?
Well, there are certain performers that do have that, but no, I don't think so. I think it's kind of over class. It's clever. When you think of Jack Benny, when you think of Bob Hope or George Burns and Gracie Allen and all that kind of comedy, it was just so clever and wonderful. The only guy that was offbeat was Groucho, and he was just wonderfully mad. I don't see any of that today, and that's kind of sad, especially for young people growing up today and looking at comedy and listening to this music. Everybody screams. Nobody just phrases right here anymore. It's I love you, hum the April. Nobody does that anymore. Everything has to be loud and brash, and maybe I'm an old fogey. That's what it is. I'm an old fogey.
Is there what is one of your favorite stories with Bob Hope or?
Bob Hope, he called me one day, and we played golf together, and I was at NBC for over 20 years. I did Squares, and I did Fantasy and some other shows, and he lived around the corner. He would go to NBC, and it was there would be the Andy Williams show, there would be Dean Martin show, there would be Laugh-In, there would be Squares, there would be Let's Make a Deal, you never saw so many stars in your life. If somebody didn't show up on my show, you just run out and grab somebody. Just, hey, come, we need you for a half hour, And they'd turn up your name real quickly. And Hope said, hey, listen, I'm doing a benefit in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I'm doing a movie. I did Annie. I said, I have to get back for the thing I'm doing Annie, the movie. And he said, I'll have you back. We had a private plane, and we get to Erie. I think it was Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, there were over 50,000 people. I know he probably got a salary. He probably got about 250,000 for it. He sent me a check for $500.
Whoa!
And like a fool, I sent it back and said, "I'm sure some charity would love this." But I should have kept it. I should have kept the doggone $500 check for Bob. He was cheap, but he
Really?
was, oh yes, he was very cheap. But
Elaborate on that.
But very giving in his time, and you must remember, we all grew up when everybody was poor. Mm-hmm. You know, I was born. I'll be talking about. I said I was born when Calvin Coolidge was president. You know, they call him Silent Cal. I said, would that be fun today? But I went through the Depression, and I don't care how successful you are, you never get over that. Mm-hmm. You never get over that. I always say, but I'm not cheap. No. In fact, my business manager said, will you stop doing those things? But hey, listen, I'm to an age where I don't have that much of a future. But I have a young wife. I always hated older guys with young wives. I thought that was the worst. And I was doing La Cage aux Folles, and I was on an airplane, and I sat next to this lovely girl who had just seen me do La Cage in St. Louis. I did it for 3 years. I did the national company 2 years and New York a year, and then I would fly out to see my mother, who was not well. On a Sunday, I'd do a Sunday matinee and catch a Sunday night. And then, I don't know if you remember the singer Johnny Desmond. He was like a brother to me, and he was dying. So I would go to the hospital, and I would see Johnny, and I'd go see my mother. And so the young lady was sitting next to me, and we started a conversation. And I was 60 at the time, and she was 25. And we've been together 30 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I started laughing. I'm saying, I always hated older guys and younger girls, but here I am. So you better not put anything down.
So, I mean, you're here at the Sedona International Film Festival. It's a prestigious festival. How does it feel to be in this lovely town surrounded by these lovely red rocks at such a great festival?
Well, you drive in and you go, oh, I forgot how gorgeous it is, you know.
Right.
It is so beautiful. It really, and as I said earlier before we went on the air, it looks like a movie set. It looks like something, but God created it. It's just gorgeous. And to come up here and spend some time is really a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so Glenn Scarpelli. Do you know Glenn?
I know Glenn very well.
I've known Glenn. I was doing a show with Leslie Uggams, and he was doing his series with Pat Harrington, who was a dear friend, and he would co-host with me. I think he was 15 years old, mm-hmm. And he's really a talented young man,
Absolutely.
You know, and he's so sweet. So he said, "Why don't you come up to Sedona and sing a couple of songs and perform?" And I said, "Hey, you got it." And so Laurie, my wife, we drove in from Palm Desert 2 nights ago. Spent a couple of nights in Phoenix to see my grandson and my great-grandsons. And yeah.
Well, we're honored to have you here, and I'd love
Thank
to hear
you.
some more stories about how, even in general, like you've been on this planet for a long time at this point.
Yes, I have.
And you talked a little bit about growing up in the Depression,
Uh-huh.
and how that really impacts you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
It's now 2017. Do you feel like we maybe could be further along, or could be a little more advanced in certain areas, or is there a certain
Well,
time
certainly in
period?
medicine and things like that, I have no idea. I really don't. I know that if it weren't for medicine today, I would have been gone a long time ago. I had cancer twice, and they would never have found it. You know, in the old days, my dad. I talk about that's what I talk about. I talk about the show tomorrow. I'm going to talk about my family. My dad died at 38, and it was on that. You know, the day he would have been in the hospital about 2 days. It was a heart thing. Like Bobby Darin. Bobby died at 38. Today, Bobby would have been maybe 3 days in the hospital. Mm-hmm. It was a heart condition that they can fix. Bang bang. So in those areas, we've really come a long way. Socially, I don't know. People used to be a little more genteel, I think, mm-hmm. And and I worry about that kind of stuff. And I won't get into politics because that's a no-win situation. But I think back to FDR, and I think back to Truman, and I think about how proud I was, to have them representing us.
Correct.
And it's anyway.
Is there a favorite era? Like if
Oh yes, absolutely. When I went to New York from West Virginia, I was 12 years old, and I was the 30s. The 30s and the 40s were the most fun time. I was singing with bands. There were big bands everywhere. You go to New York, and there was the Capitol Theater, there was the Paramount, and there was the Strand, and then all the hotels you'd have Artie Shaw, Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Harry James, and all the wonderful singers. And there were nightclubs everywhere with great performers, and the music was wonderful. And you'd go see vaudeville at the Palace, and you see, you'd have a big band. You'd have a vaudeville show. You'd have a comic and a dancer and a thing, and you do 5 shows a day. I did that, and that was fun. Live entertainment, it was done so wonderfully in those days, in the 30s, 40s, even into the 50s, and then of course television killed all that.
Right.
But thank God for television. I wouldn't be sitting here today with a nice outfit on.
And I think live is actually having a resurgence, but it's just online today instead
Yeah.
of live theater.
Well,
How do you
a
feel about
lot
the
of
live?
a lot of young people go online and become stars overnight. It's amazing.
Isn't
really.
it amazing?
It is.
How hard was it growing up in that in that industry? You started at 15.
I was 15.
You were a
band singer. I was with a band out of Detroit by the name of Bob Chester, and I was making $50 a week, which. Hey, when I was a page boy at NBC, I was making $17.50. I thought that was pretty good.
That's pretty
But
good.
$50 a week, I could send mom home. Yeah, rather money to my mom at home, and it was wonderful. You go to the ballrooms and people were dancing, and you get up and you sang, and you got back on the bus and you'd go to the thing, and yeah, life was terrific.
And do you think it was easier to kind of make a name for yourself back then, or?
Well, no, you needed a hit record, or you needed. I know a lot of talented people that never made it, and I know a lot of semi-talented people that became huge stars. So you just can't. I don't know. Just because you have talent doesn't mean you're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
You need a lot of luck, and you have to be in the right place at the right time. I wouldn't have done Squares. I was doing a Broadway show with Julie Harris called Skyscraper, and I came home a week early, or I'd never have done Squares because another show was coming in, Bonjour, with Robert Preston. And had I had that extra week on Broadway, they give you a 2-week notice. They paid us for 2 weeks, but we only worked once. The day after I got back into LA, I got a call from Bob Quigley about doing a game show, and I said, "What's a game show?" I didn't know some game shows. I've been a straight man, but I didn't know from game shows. So that I would never have done Squares. Somebody else would have done it. So timing is good, and I have had a wonderful life.
Is live performance really where it's at for you?
Oh yes,
Better than
absolutely.
TV?
Even live television, I did Sullivan so many times. I did in 1955. I did a thing called for Gordon Jenkins on NBC, an hour and a half live with Helen O'Connell, Ethel Waters, who else? Phil Harris, Edward Everett Horton, and I was the young lead. And an hour and a half live. The orchestra, 110 pieces in the orchestra. Yeah. I was scared to death, but that was fun. Yeah, live television was really exciting.
Yeah.
Scares the heck out of you, but boy, you come up another level.
Mm-hmm.
You go on TV and you're at this level. If it's live, you're about right up here. It's just you have that extra edge. When my dad died, we were in West Virginia, and he had no insurance because he had a congenital heart condition. Mom was 32. They sent me to Huntington, West Virginia, my home. They lived in Wheeling. And my mother took my sister Joanne to New York. Joni was not quite 15. Mom got a job at Macy's. Mm-hmm. And Joni was a dancer and a model. And she did not want to be an actress. She married Dick Hames. He left her for Nora Eddington Flynn. In those days, if you were in a high, maybe your viewers don't know this. if you made millions of dollars in the 40s, you were taxed 92%. See, so don't complain now. 92%.
Wow, really?
You got 8 cents. Oh yeah. But if you got a check for five, and Dick would get a check from from Decca for $500,000, he had hit after hit after. Dick Haymes was the highest paid American for 2 years in a row, and nobody remembers Dick Haymes. Anyway, he was spent all the money. So when he left my sister with 3 children, and I don't know, maybe $1,012,000, $1,002,000 maybe in debt. In those days, each spouse were responsible for it. Ronald Reagan changed that, by the way. So my sister had to go to work. My sister didn't want to be an actress. My sister was the wonderful actress, the most beautiful actress you ever saw. Her name was Joanne Drew. She did, all the movies with Monty Clift and John Wayne, Red River and To War Yellow Ribbon and All the King's Men. And the last thing she wanted to do was become an actress. But she became a very famous actress and paid off all her debts, and she married John Ireland, which was a horrible mistake. And I said, don't do that, Joni. Then she married a wonderful guy who passed and left her a lot. But her last husband was the cutest guy I ever met. His name was C.V. Wood. C.V. Wood was from Texas. He created the chili cook-off, but he also designed Disneyland, and he became the head of McCulloch Oil. And they owned all this land in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And Bob McCulloch, the president, said, what are we going to do with this land? And he said, these are all true stories, by the way. He said, well, goddamn, he said, let's go buy the tar Pisa. He said, we put the tar Pisa in the desert, people are going to come. He went to Pisa, and he said, this sumbitch going to fall. He said, we could do a beautiful replica with an elevator. And they just laughed at him. While he was there, he read that they were tearing down the London Bridge. So he went and bought the London Bridge. And he took it to Havasu, where all this McCulloch land was. Now they had to get water. So he went to LBJ, who was a pal of his. He said, Mr. President, I have a favor to ask. He said, now don't panic here. I need you to divert just a piece of the Colorado River. He said, what are you, crazy? They'll hang me. They got the water there, and that's Lake Havasu. And my brother-in-law, this cute, wonderful man who was married to Joni, he did all that. He passed very early, but gosh, was he fun. God, I loved him to death. So Joni wound up wonderful.
Well, we're going to quickly break for a commercial.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back in because I think people in this room have so many questions for you
Sure.
that you're going to be overwhelmed.
Okay.
So we will be right back. Please stay tuned to our live broadcast, and we'll see you in just a few minutes after these messages.